Axios ran a story on how getting the water out of the hydrants in Pacific Palisades was more complicated than it seems. I'm sure it's very complicated. That's why I pay 13% of my income in the state every year to people who I assumed were working on things like this. You know what the absolute worst thing for the environment is? Wildfires. A 22 study found that the smoke from just the two in 2020 wiped out 18 years of carbon reduction in the state, which means we suffered the pain of driving those early model Priuses for nothing. California is the place that spends money and gets nothing, which is why you may have noticed when the fires broke out, no one escaped by high-speed rail.
Maher is making waves by calling out California officials for their poor handling of the wildfires, sparking outrage among some Democrats and media figures. It seems like they're still not open to hearing common sense calls for better use of taxpayer money. Let's watch.
Yes, undeniably true that LA is built in a stupid place to build a city. When asked why so many of the hydrants in the Palisades ran out of water, Governor Newsom said the local folks are trying to figure that out. Yeah, you got to do that before the fire. I've heard people say, do you want to pay more taxes to fund this? No, I want you to use the exorbitant taxes you already collect to prioritize it. We have the highest marginal tax rate in America, higher than almost all other states, and soon Greenland. What is included for that? Breadsticks? Because it clearly doesn't cover fire. That's government's job. Protect us from crime, violence, theft, fire. At least in the Palisades, the hydrants were still there. 300 other ones around the city are just gone. Stolen for parts. One of the 3 reservoirs for the Palisades was offline at the one time of year when it was most needed. LA's Mayor Karen Bass, the Nero of American politics, was fiddling in Ghana while the city burned and later placed the blame on 8 months of negligible rain and winds that have not been seen in LA in at least 14 years. Yeah, that's not that long a time. Maybe look in the history books to see how our ancestors handled it back in 2011.
The real tragedy with people like Maher is that they're smart enough to spot these issues and bold enough to speak out, but don't realize they're rooted in the very foundation of the Democratic Party. The problems Maher is pointing out, wasteful spending and inefficiency, have always been tied to big government and liberal bureaucracies. After all, when has the government ever been known for using tax dollars wisely? Let's watch.
The good news is our fire chief is a lesbian. Am I against a lesbian being chief? Of course not. Do I think a lesbian can do the job? Of course I do. And maybe she's the best person for the job. Or maybe they really wanted a lesbian in that job, and she's just the best lesbian for the job. And with essential services, that's not good enough. Crowley's official bio says Chief Crowley leads a diverse department, creating, supporting, and promoting a culture that values diversity, inclusion, and equity while striving to meet and exceed the expectations of the communities. Well, you didn't exceed my expectations, which was that the whole city wouldn't burn down. But it's telling that diversity is mentioned twice before we get to while striving to meet expectations. Now, can you do 2 things at once? Yes, but it matters where your head is. Deputy Chief Kristen Larson said this.
You want to see somebody that responds to your house, your emergency, whether it's a medical call or a fire call, that looks like you.
Which would sound kind of racist if a Southern sheriff said it. Who teaches people this bullshit? No one cares what someone looks like when they're pulling you out of a burning house. Larson also seems to believe that if a female firefighter can't pick up a man, it's his fault. She said, he got himself into the wrong place if I have to carry him out of a fire.
Talking about taxes is one thing, but this comment is what really set off the radical left. They preach tolerance, until someone questions one of their untouchable ideas. In this case, the so-called offense was just pointing out the truth.
Because who pays the highest price when politicians don't prioritize basic services? The first responders, our heroes, who every time go above and beyond because they have to, because we leave it all to them. Now, is wokeness the main reason for the fires? Of course not. But it's also not wrong to associate some of the unforced errors our government made with the things normies see as hallmarks of uber-progressive politics: questionable budget priorities, high taxes that get you nothing, making everything about identity politics, virtue signaling overseas instead of tending to the nuts and bolts at home. Cali has no shortage of safety commissions and agencies and bureaucrats and regulators, and of course, sign language interpreters who communicate with their face. Common sense, we better get some of that back soon, because wildfires in California are like boob jobs in a strip club. Inevitable, and they're only going to get bigger.
It's hard to imagine Maher ever seeing common sense make a comeback in the left during his lifetime. The movement has been speeding toward its current state ever since the Obama years, and the failures are still too fresh for people to forget. That's why figures like Maher have been saying the Democratic Party is on life support, and maybe it's time for something new to take its place. Liberals should just hope that whatever comes next doesn't rely on the same flawed principles that got them here. What do you think? Can the Democrats turn things around before the next election, or is it too late to save the party? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps the channel grow.